It's 10 a.m. here in Seoul on Monday, July 30th. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting, and these are our top stories this morning. Last week, North Korea handed the U.S. 55 boxes containing the remains of U.S. soldiers who never made it back from the Korean War. The U.S. says, despite reports to the contrary, the North did not ask for or receive any money in return. A South Korean medical team is in Laos, where a dam collapsed last week, killing an as-yet unknown number of people. They'll be helping the injured and working to prevent the spread of disease. It's not known why the dam broke, but it was built in part by two Korean companies. And with record-breaking temperatures to continue all this week, millions of Koreans are taking their summer vacation. Traffic on the nation's highways is expected to peak this Friday. North Korea returned 55 sets of soldiers' remains to the U.S. on Friday. And while reports and government officials have said that Pyongyang had been reimbursed for related costs, it appears that no money was exchanged this time around. EG1 has more.
The U.S. says it made no payments to North Korea for the return of the remains of American troops last week. Answering a question from South Korea's Yonhap News Agency, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert wrote that the Secretary of Defense has the authority to reimburse the North or any other country for expenses associated with the recovery and storage of remains. But in this instance, she said North Korea did not ask for money and no money was exchanged. The message went on to say that the repatriation was part of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's commitment to the promise he made to U.S. President Donald Trump, and that it was one of the palpable implementations of the joint statement agreed by the two leaders in Singapore last month. This comes after North Korea on Friday returned 55 boxes of remains of American soldiers killed in the Korean War. Prior to the return, a Defense POW/MIA accounting agency official had said that though the U.S. government does not pay any government or individual for the remains of missing Americans, it is authorized to reimburse the North for the cost of the operation from recovery to return. A Congressional Research Service report showed that Washington paid $28 million to North Korea for the recovery of remains between 1996 and 2005, as a reimbursement for the cost of their joint field activities. 이지원, Arirang News.
And as for the main pledges from the Singapore summit, North Korea's denuclearization and what it will get in return, the repatriation may have added some momentum on that front. It's now expected that the North and the U.S. will get back to work on denuclearization and the security guarantee Pyongyang wants from Washington. Oh Jung-hee has more details.
Now that North Korea has returned more of the remains of American soldiers who died in the Korean War, attention falls on how Pyongyang and Washington will proceed with denuclearization talks. Though Friday's repatriation is not directly relevant to Pyongyang's denuclearization, it's widely seen that the move did help both sides build trust and therefore could have a positive effect on their denuclearization dialogue. Since the June 12th summit in Singapore, North Korea and the U.S. have had difficulty moving forward on the denuclearization front. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Pyongyang for the third time, but could not meet Kim Jong-un, and after his visit, the North claimed Washington was making unilateral demands about denuclearization and inspections. Pyongyang began dismantling key facilities at its Seohae satellite launching station, believed to have been the regime's key ICBM test site, but at the same time pressed Washington and Seoul to declare a formal end to the Korean War. From here on, it's expected that North Korea and the U.S. will focus on finding a middle ground between the U.S. giving the regime a security guarantee through measures like ending the Korean War and Pyongyang taking steps to denuclearize. This week, the foreign ministers of the two Koreas, the U.S. and China, will all be attending the ASEAN Regional Forum in Singapore. Their meetings, bilateral or otherwise, could help add momentum to the Pyongyang-Washington denuclearization talks. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
On Tuesday, South and North Korea will be sending military generals to the border village of Panmunjom to talk about ways to implement parts of April's Inter-Korean Summit agreement. The objective is to reduce military tensions, and apparently this second meeting of generals comes at North Korea's request. Lee Seung-jae reports.
South and North Korea will hold their second general-level military talks on Tuesday at the Peace House on the southern side of the Truth Village of Panmunjom to discuss measures to enforce the military portion of their April summit agreement. The general-level military talks were first proposed by Pyongyang, who showed disappointment over the lack of progress during their first meeting back in June.
Let's not have such talks again. The military, it's disappointing. We fully understand your stance, but next time let's prepare more so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Major General Kim Do-gyun will be leading South Korea's 5-member delegation, while the Lieutenant General An Ik-san will lead the North Korean delegation. The two sides are expected to discuss measures to build trust and increase arms control, such as disarming the joint security area in the DMZ, and possibly withdrawing troops and military equipment from border guard posts. Also on the agenda could be the idea of a joint project to excavate the remains of troops in the DMZ who were killed during the Korean War, while some observers say that the military could also discuss the summit agreement to turn the Northern Limit Line, a de facto sea border, into a peace zone to prevent accidental clashes. The first general-level military talks, which were held for the first time in a decade, led to two sides agreeing to completely restore their military communication lines. The two Koreas hope their second talks will be even more fruitful, in line with the Panmunjom Declaration. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korean athletes are now training with their South Korean teammates for the Asian Games coming up in Indonesia. It's the latest in the two sides' cooperation in sports that started this year with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Won Jung-hwan reports.
34 North Korean athletes will be joining their counterparts from the south on joint teams at the Asian Games in about 3 weeks' time in Jakarta and Palembang, Indonesia. The delegation flew to South Korea on Sunday via Beijing for joint training. The two Koreas are set to field joint teams in women's basketball, dragon boat racing, and rowing for the Asian Games, which will be held in August. There are 18 North Korean athletes here for the dragon boat team, 8 for rowing, 4 for women's basketball, and 4 support staff. The North Korean paddlers will begin their training with South Koreans at Chungju, about 150 kilometers south of Seoul.
When we move to the training center in Chungju, we're expecting to first go through some medical tests and administrative works. Then after a few days later, we think we will start the joint training. We expect male squad to get good results considering what they achieved in short period of time at the previous Guangzhou Asian Games. Also, our female athletes are doing well. And together with outstanding North Koreans in the team, we expect to grab some medals at the tournament.
In women's basketball, 3 North Koreans, Ro Soo-kyung, Jang Mi-kyung, and Kim Hae-yeon, who all played in the inter-Korean friendly matches in Pyongyang earlier this month, were named to the unified team along with 9 South Korean players. The South Korean team are the defending champions at the Asian Games. They're currently in Taiwan for an international tournament and will get back this Wednesday. Until then, the 3 North Korean players will be practicing on their own in Jincheon, 90 kilometers south of Seoul. They don't have a lot of time to practice together, though. The Asian Games begin on August 18th. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
A South Korean medical team is in Laos to help with recovery efforts following the collapse of a dam a week ago and the subsequent flooding. Over the next 10 days, 15 doctors and 5 support staff will treat displaced residents of Atepo province and help prevent the spread of contagious diseases. More than 130 people are still missing after last week's dam collapse, which has so far claimed nearly 30 lives. It's still not known why the dam broke. It was built by a joint venture that included 2 Korean companies. Early Sunday, a powerful earthquake struck the Indonesian island of Lombok, a popular tourist destination, killing more than a dozen people and leaving scores more injured. For more on this and other news from around the world, our Oh Soo-young is at the news center. Soo-young, take it away.
Devon, as of Monday morning, at least 14 people have been reported dead and more than 160 have been injured on Indonesia's southeastern island of Lombok. The US Geological Survey says the 6.4 magnitude quake hit just before 6 a.m. local time at a depth of 7 kilometers. The epicenter was some 50 kilometers northeast of the island's main city, Mataram, which is far from the main tourist spots. Thousands of homes have been damaged by the earthquake and more than 60 aftershocks that followed. There has also been a sizable landslide on Mount Rinjani, according to Indonesia's disaster authorities. The tremors could be felt on the holiday resort island of Bali, which is 100 kilometers away, although no damages or casualties were reported. Local authorities, volunteers and civic groups are still looking for missing persons and trying to determine the impact of the quake, so the number of casualties could increase. Earthquakes are frequent in Indonesia as it sits on the Ring of Fire, which rattles countries around the Pacific Rim with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Palestinian teenager Ahed Tamimi left prison on Sunday after serving 8 months for slapping 2 Israeli soldiers near her home in the West Bank. The 17-year-old activist was arrested in December last year after a video of her kicking and slapping the soldiers went viral online. And since then, she's become an icon for Palestinian independence. She was handed an 8-month prison term in an Israeli prison and a fine of about $1,400 as part of her plea agreement. Upon her release on Sunday, the 17-year-old said the resistance would continue against the Israeli occupation.
I can't predict what can happen in the future, and I can't talk in depth because I'm under probation. Maybe in the future, Palestine will be free. I don't know what will happen in the future. I can't make decisions for the future, and I hope that the occupation will leave so I don't even think of doing these things.
Thousands of Russians have taken to central Moscow to protest against a proposal to raise the retirement age. According to local civic groups, some 6,000 people rallied on Sunday to oppose the move, and President Vladimir Putin, whose ratings have taken a tumble due to the issue. A recent poll shows around 90% of the Russian population are against the proposal to increase the retirement age starting next year to 65 from the current 60 for men and 63 from 55 for women. The aim is to boost the state budget and raise the average pension in the country, but the bill has been widely unpopular, sparking a series of protests in recent weeks. After Sunday's rally, an aide to Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny said that Navalny and 2 organizers of the protest had been arrested. Bosnian athlete Lorenz Listo was named the winner of this year's Mostar diving contest on Sunday, where some of the world's youngest divers showcased their moves. The Bosnian city has held the 24-meter high dive tradition for centuries at the Old Bridge, which was first built in the 16th century. The plunge into Neretva River has been a test of courage and resilience for Mostar men and is celebrated to this day by both locals and international divers. The competition on Sunday, the 452nd to be held, attracted 40 competitors and an audience of several thousand.
It's summer vacation season here in Korea, a time when it's estimated some 60% of the country will take at least a little time off. Many of them are hitting the road this week and next. On Sunday, more than 2 million people went down to the 7 beaches of Busan amid the record-breaking heat wave. At mountain resorts, too, big crowds of people looking to cool off. The roads will be at their busiest this summer over the next 2 weeks, with the government saying highway traffic will peak this Friday, August 3rd. Weather forecasters, meanwhile, say the heat wave won't be letting up anytime soon. In fact, here in Seoul, we're looking at highs of around 39 degrees this week. The heat's caused a surge in electricity demand, and that has led to power failures. The government says the electricity supply has now stabilized, but there'll be another peak in the second week of August. And what was a typhoon over Japan now looks like it won't bring us much rain at all. Kim Yo-sun reports.
Typhoon Jongdari, which has brought heavy rain to Japan, continues to weaken as it heads towards South Korea's resort island of Jeju. The Korea Meteorological Administration says the typhoon had weakened to a tropical depression by Sunday afternoon, but warned that it will still bring strong winds to South Korea's east coast on Monday and the south coast on Tuesday. The Weather Office added that the heat wave that has led to power failures will continue. The government says electricity supply has been stabilized as of last Friday. While the daily electricity demand peaked at 92.48 million kilowatts on July 24th, it remained around 90 million kilowatts throughout the rest of last week. The electricity reserve margin, which alerted the nation as it dropped into the 7% range last Wednesday, has jumped back to around 9%, closer to the 10% mark, at which power supply is considered stable. Yet the government cannot let its guard down as we near August, when electricity use is expected to rise again.
The second week of August, when most companies resume operations, is considered the electricity usage peak for the summer. We'll face no major challenges even during the peak, as we've increased the supply capacity by at least 1 million kilowatts.
As this year's unexpected heat wave has put the nation's electricity supply on red alert, the government continues to come up with additional measures to tackle the problem. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
The string of extremely hot days has apparently reduced the number of mosquitoes carrying Japanese encephalitis by over 70%. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the number of this particular breed of small, dark brown mosquitoes is down 71.4% compared to last year. Japanese encephalitis is not common in modern Korea, but it can be fatal, and there are usually a couple of dozen cases a year. The number of mosquitoes in general also dropped by 2.2%. The KCDC says there are fewer of the pests because of the extreme heat and the short monsoon. A group of BMW owners have filed a lawsuit against BMW Korea after, in the first case, related to engine fires that led the German automaker to recall more than 106,000 units of 42 of its models. 4 BMW car owners together filed a suit at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office on Monday against the German automaker and its official dealer Deutsche Motors. The plaintiff's lawyer says they're asking for around $4,500 each and could request more in damages depending on the results of an inspection. The plaintiffs argue that the automaker concealed the defect in the engines and did not do enough to prevent vehicles from catching fire. So far, at least 7 BMW 520D X-Drive vehicles have caught fire in Korea this year while on the road. Diets in Korea are changing. People are eating a lot less rice, meaning there are growing stockpiles of rice that can't be sold. Well, now there's a possible new use for those. A new study shows that feeding rice to cows often results in animals that produce higher quality beef and milk. Cho Sung-min explains.
Rice is still the most common staple for South Koreans, but it's clearly lost some popularity. A government report shows that in 2017, rice production hit the lowest level in 37 years, and the amount of rice people eat has been falling steadily since 2011. That means there's literally tons of rice left over, which the nation is having a hard time finding ways to use. Now, researchers from the Rural Development Administration have conducted multiple tests to see if rice is suitable to be used in livestock feed. They said cows that were given special feed made of rice became more healthy and produced higher quality meat and milk. According to their study, top-grade beef from the rice-fed cows and the ordinary ones showed a quality difference of 10 percentage points, with the rice-fed cows clearly superior. Their beef also had twice the amount of vitamin E, which functions as an antioxidant. In the case of dairy cows, the ones that were fed rice showed a significantly higher pregnancy rate than the ones that had normal animal feed. They also yielded more milk, and their milk contained almost 30% fewer somatic cells, a type of blood cell that raises the chance of growing harmful bacteria. With those discoveries, the researchers predicted that more farms will grow rice specifically to feed animals instead of people.
More land will be used to cultivate special rice for animal feed, since feeding rice to cows has been proven to have positive outcomes.
The RDA says it's studying ways to use rice to make specific kinds of animal feed that can enhance the overall quality of South Korea's livestock. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
For decades, it's been said that one day robots will be more than faceless parts of an assembly line. They might one day think and feel like humans. But until that day comes, Korean researchers have developed a robot that, with human input, can do a pretty good job of mimicking our emotions. They say these humanoid machines could be used in animatronics for films and more. Park Se-young has this report.
This robot delivers lines from a movie and captures the emotions of the character.
You know, my father was right. Richard Parker never saw me as his friend.
This time it reacts emotionally to music. The robot, which is capable of detailed, subtle movements, was made by piling layers of thin film material. After creating a foldable blueprint of the desired object, the researchers print the blueprint and connect the layers with a string to create a 3D figure.
Using the same techniques as 3D printing, it creates the desired 3D figure by repeating layers from the bottom. It takes about 2 to 3 hours.
When the researchers press the strings, the robot moves like a marionette puppet. When combined with artificial intelligence technology, the robot can perform more functions.
If combined with an intelligent structure, it'll be able to react to what I say and interact as such.
The researchers expect the robot to be used for graphics production in the film industry. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. Typhoon Jongdari has weakened to a tropical depression, but it has caused casualties in 8 prefectures across Japan and will also have some impact on South Korea. Eastern parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces will see some showers, while Jeju Island will receive 10 to 40 millimeters of rainfall, along with bearable temperatures. Meanwhile, the western parts of the country will need to brace for steamy, moist air and stronger heat today. So more record-breaking heat is expected over the next 2 days, with highs nearing 38 degrees Celsius here in the capital. And for today, Seoul and Daejeon could have highs of 37 degrees. Daegu and Chuncheon will get up to 35 degrees this afternoon. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So western parts of South Korea will have sweltering weather conditions, while North Korea is also under a heat wave. In Japan, temperatures are expected to shoot up after the typhoon moves away. Lingering cold fronts will bring a chilly week for Southeast Australia. And downpours are set to once again target the eastern United States this week, including New York and Washington, D.C. London will get some relief from the heat with rain on Monday. Or as for South America, most major cities will be under mostly sunny skies. And taking you to Europe now, London will have some showers along with bearable temperatures at 25 degrees Celsius. Lastly, to Africa, Dakar will be rainy, while Addis Ababa will have unstable weather conditions. And that's the weather update for now.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. There's a lot more coming up at 12 o'clock noon Korea time, so do join us then. Bye for now.
네, 조선시대 궁중요리가 준비되어 있습니다.
도착하시면 바로 드실 수 있으세요. 부드러움과 풍미를 가지고 있는 한우가 준비되어 있습니다.
건강한 한국식 디저트가 준비되어 있습니다.
술맛 진짜 좋습니다.